Yo, this is Ist. Today we're going to take a look at the LyraStarterGame inventory system. As usual, I have made notes and I've made them available. I will put the link in the video description. The inventory system is the base upon which the equipment system and the weapon systems are built. We will look at those later, but for now we're just going to focus on the base inventory. There's a lot of code here, and in general it works well. However, there are definitely some issues that I've linked below that you are going to want to read and we'll talk about in this video. So there are reasons that you may not be able to use this system as is. If you can't use it as is, I also posted here a method for how to take this and sort of make it your own so that you can extend it. Also note that this system is fully multiplayer compatible. This was new to me and I found it interesting. You may also. All right, so now I'm going to show you my modified inventory system. So we're looking here at an XCL inventory item definition. This is very closely based on the Lyra one with some improvements that I've made. Here we have optional item stats. What is the default stat count when I pick up an item? We've set that to 1. This is the default, the same as if this doesn't exist at all. What is the maximum stat count? We've set it to 0, again the default. What is the total or the maximum total count? We've set it to 0. So there is no maximum, there is no stack size limit, and you get 1 every time you pick up the item. So this is pretty closely resembling Lyra's setup, except that stack counts don't work in Lyra. So let's take a look here. Let's pick that up. You see now we have 1, 2, 3, 8, etc. Right? We don't need to go on forever. There's 1 stack. Every time I pick up a rock, I get 1 rock, and it goes in that 1 stack. So, okay, great. Let's make some changes. So, we get 3 rocks every time we pick up a rock. The maximum size of each stack is 5. The maximum total count is 10. So let's see the difference here. When we come in, oops, we pick that up, we got 3. That's what we expect. Pick that up, we got 3 more. We have a total of 6, but we have 2 stacks, a 5 and a 1. Pick it up, we're at 9. Pick this one up, and we only got 1 more. We got 10 total. So we have 2 stacks of 5. And also this rock did not disappear. So I'm keeping track of the bot when it picks it up. Does it get everything out of this inventory container? And if yes, then the item disappears out of the world. But no, we only got 1 thing. So there's still 2 more rocks left in here. So it doesn't despawn. So again, these were very easy changes to make based on starting with the Lyra inventory system. But the Lyra inventory system itself is not a good base, so you're just going to want to refactor that to be your own code, and then once you do, it's very easy to make changes. Overall inventory concepts. First of all, you have to make an item definition. This is basically like a class default object, if you think of it that way. And so it's constant. And the constant definition consists of 1 or more item fragments, which we will take a look at. Some examples are, there's an equipable item fragment, which is kind of like an interface, right? It lets you say, give me, search for fragments. If there's an equipable item fragment, then it's also an equipable item. We'll look at that later. There's set stats, which is also very important. So the item definition defines the base or the default stats that an item will have. When you then create an item from the definition, you have an instance, and then the stats for that instance can change with the instance. So the default stats are defined in the definition. A new item gets those stats, and then it can change its stats as it exists. There's also the inventory manager, which in Lyra goes on the controller component, and this keeps track of all the item instances in a pawn's inventory. So everything that is in the inventory becomes an instance, is managed by this inventory manager component. The last piece is the iPickupable interface, and this essentially determines what goes into an inventory when something is picked up. Item definition and fragments. The item definition, basically this is just data. Here's the class name. There's nothing really here except a display name. I don't even know if this name is ever used. I think it's just so that the developers can say, hey, what is this item, other than just the name of the asset itself. Most importantly, it's an array of item fragments that really define it. So what are item fragments? This is kind of like a component of a definition, right? So an actor, you have different components that implement different things. For an item definition, you have different fragments that all implement different things. An example is equipable item fragment. So here's the actual C++ class name. This holds a reference to an equipment definition, which we'll look at when we look at the equipment system. And this fragment is what allows the inventory item to be a part of the equipment system. So think of this kind of like an interface, right? So when the user is trying to equip an item, the C++ searches for an item fragment of the equipable item type. If it finds that fragment, then it gets this equipment definition reference, and basically it casts the item, a generic item, to a piece of equipment. Another important fragment is the set stats. And the set stats fragment sets the default statistics, so I guess that's why it's called set stats. So it sets the initial value of the statistics for an item when the item is instantiated. And so let's take a look at an example here. In Shooter Core, there's an ID rifle item definition, and it defines the following. Let's take a look at the ID rifle. We have display name. The different fragments are this one, which says it's an equipable item and links to the equipment definition, which is a weapon ID rifle. We have another quick bar icon. We have set stats. This is the one we want to see. So the set stats fragment contains a couple of different things. LyraStarterGame weapon magazine size, value 30. Magazine ammo, value 30, spare ammo, value 60, and then here some more fragments. So this ID rifle item definition contains like 5 fragments, it looks like, of which one of them is set stats, which has tag value, tag value, tag value. You can add anything that you want here to define your weapon. Here they are. So again, there are some other ones. For example, pickup icon, which is specific to the equipment spawning pads we're going to look at later. Quick bar icon, which is specific to the quick bar, which is part of the that's part of the equipment system. Again, we'll look at later. Reticle config is part of the weapon system, and those are all the fragments that are part of the Lyra inventory system. So now some constructive criticism. First of all, I want to say that the Lyra inventory system is not bad. I'm not trying to say it's bad. Okay, it does what LyraStarterGame needs it to do. My issue with it is that it's also not very configurable at all. And so for me to change it for my different requirements for my game would be a significant amount of changes, and it would be extremely difficult to then merge in any future work that Epic does. I fully expect they're going to modify the system. It definitely looks like prototype code. I would be very surprised if they don't change it. And so I don't want to make a bunch of changes to it and then not be able to see what they did to it. So I've essentially just duplicated this whole system so that I can make changes to my system and I could still get updates from them. Some of the issues that I had with it are its non-functional handling of item stack counts. So there is code in Lyra to allow for item stack counts, but it's not fully implemented. Basically, every item stack is limited to 1. This isn't a problem in Lyra because all they do is add 1 of this or 1 of that. So for example, you get 1 pistol or you get 1 rifle, and that works fine. But if you wanted to have a stack of whatever and have more than one of that, the Lyra system doesn't support this. So you can add it. It's not difficult. I did it in my duplicated code, but by default, Lyra doesn't support this. This doesn't affect ammo in Lyra because ammo is a weapon attribute. You saw that in the set stats fragment. So the weapon attributes or item attributes are not affected by this. However, in the actual inventory manager itself, it keeps track of how many stacks of this type of item do you have, and that just doesn't work in Lyra. Here are some other issues that are related to that, I guess. One of which, also very important, is that when I try and add things to the inventory, I would like to know, how many actually went in. What if I have a maximum of one thing? I have a unique item, right? Then if I already have that, I want it to fail if I try and add more. And if I don't have it, I want to know that it succeeded if I added one. What if I have a limit of 10? I can only have 10 of a certain type of item. I want to know, did I successfully add 0 of 10, so I'm at the max already, or did I get 3 of 10 or 10 of 10? Lyra's interface does not expose any of this information. It just assumes that there's always success when you try and add items, and so that definitely I needed to change for my requirements. Another issue that I had is that Lyra puts the inventory manager on the controller, which means that in a networked game, it is available only to the server and to the client that locally controls the pawn, which again for Lyra is fine. But in my case, there are AI bots that are on the same team as the player, and the player needs to be able to view and modify the inventory of those bots. And so I could not put this on the controller because all bots are owned by the server, and so therefore the players had no access to the data. So I moved that to the pawn rather than to the controller. So I've talked about some things that may require you to significantly modify Lyra's inventory system as I have. And so I decided to document that here. Now, what I did is I basically duplicated the code, the headers and the C++, and here's where I put them. After duplicating the code, then I refactored all Lyra names to XCL, which is my game feature plugin name. Class names, method names, variable names, file names, everything in there that's Lyra, you need to change to this. Next, the files had an inconsistent naming convention, so I fixed all those names. And finally, in the text of the tag itself, the name of the tag, there were some Lyra tags that I redefined as XCL. And this way, Lyra can add tags, add code, delete code to their inventory system, which I understand is prototype. And that's totally fine. That will not affect any of the work that I've done because I copied it out, renamed it all, and now I'm modifying my own. So this whole process took about 2 hours. Writer has some great refactor features that did most of the work for me. Part of the time was figuring out what was going on with this widget, which I documented here for you. So I bet you can do it even less than 2 hours since I've gone through and literally told you here's what to copy and where to copy it. I bet you can do it in an hour, maybe less. All right, so now that we've taken a look at the inventory system, you probably also will want to look at the equipment system. I'm not going to go over that in depth in this video because I haven't actually used this system yet. I reviewed it, I documented it, it's here, you should read through the docs if you care. I haven't used it though, so I don't know, how much changes will really be needed here, don't know. So I will make a video for this later when I get some experience with it. Also, there is the weapon system, which again, I documented, including the gameplay abilities for the melee attack and for, in general, ranged weapons. So if you're interested in that, take a look. But again, I have not extensively used this, so I'm not going to make a video about this yet until I do. If this video doesn't suck, please consider liking, maybe even subscribe. I do sometimes make videos to help other people learn about Lyra and Unreal Engine. This is how I'm learning, is by trying to figure shit out, document it, try and explain it to other people. If there is stuff that I could do better, you got suggestions for improvements or things you'd like to see different, please let me know in the comments. I do read them and I appreciate the feedback you guys give. Thanks. Have a nice day.